Hey everyone, my name's Diana Nguyen from Trinity Health and Living, and today I just wanted to go through a couple of questions around shamanism and shamanic healing, because I've been getting quite a few of those, and also doing a little bit of myth busting around shamanic healing, because just in the past couple of weeks, I've noticed that, there's still some people out there that aren't really sure exactly what shamanism is about, which, to me kind of means that I haven't explained myself properly. So I'm going to try to do my best in this video to be able to explain it a little bit more. As always, if you do have any questions after watching this video about it and want to know more, then you can always contact me, and I'll also leave my contact details below so that you can contact me whenever you want to. So don't mind me if sometimes I look over here, because I've actually got like a document with a couple of the questions and all that kind of stuff, just so that I can remember. So the questions I'm going to be covering today is: what is shamanism? Is shamanic healing the same as reiki? What types of things do shamans do from a healing perspective? What tools do shamans use as part of healing? Are shamans psychic? Do all shamans use plant medicine? Is shamanic healing dangerous? And what are the sorts of things that I can feel after a shamanic session? So let's talk about what shamanism is. Now, I've already done a video where I've tried to explain what shamanic healing is, so I'll put the link below, because I'm not necessarily going to go and rehash everything, but I might in this video just talk a little bit more about some things that I might have missed from there. So the first thing I say about shamanism is that it's pretty much one of the oldest forms of healing in the world. It stems from the indigenous cultures all the way back then. So it's been around for hundreds and perhaps even thousands and eons of years and all that kind of stuff. But it's not like shamanism itself is not necessarily just based on the healing. It's also in some ways a way of life. And shamans kind of view the world, and I've said this before, from a very different perspective. As a shaman, we kind of see that everything is connected. So even though people might not, for example, be able to communicate with trees, or they think that plants or rocks aren't sentient beings or don't necessarily have a consciousness to them, shamans and actually other people who wouldn't identify themselves as shamans can actually connect with the consciousness within the trees, the rocks and all that kind of stuff, and communicate. And so part of the whole shamanism work and shamans is that there is a connection to nature there, and we can tap into that and draw on the wisdom from nature whenever it's required. And when I talk about nature, I don't just mean animals, and I don't just mean plants and trees and rocks and all that sort of stuff, but it's also from the elements. So air, earth, water, fire, and also looking at what else naturally occurs around us. So if we look at the planets, for example, cycles, how the moon works, and the sun, how all that kind of works with the earth, it can even go out as far as that. I personally, myself, I wouldn't say I'm an astrologist, so I don't really understand that much about planetary cycles and all that kind of stuff, but I do know that for some people it can have a bigger effect than others. And so in some ways, like, we're still all connected. Shamans also have access to different dimensions and can access beings or spirits on the other side of the veil. So even though we physically can't see what's there, shamans have the ability to tap into that, and some of them might be able to physically see with their third eye, their inner vision, or just know or feel that there is stuff on the other side. And so they can pretty easily tap into those dimensions. They can very easily change or alter their state of consciousness to be able to access those dimensions. And from being in those dimensions, they can be in contact with, you know, the spirits, hopefully more the spirits from, like, you know, which have our best intentions at heart, which come from a very loving space, and working with those spirits to actually understand from them what's going on with the world, what's going on in their own lives, what's going on in the lives of the community or the client lives, and bring back that wisdom and understanding from that world and apply it to the reality that we kind of call Earth and where we are right now. And another thing that, you know, shamans and shamanism is about is ritual and ceremony. And, you know, the reason why we use ritual and ceremony in a lot of our work is pretty much to, I guess, create a stronger connection to nature and everything around us. Like, you know, we come from the aspect of unity consciousness, that everything is connected. So rituals and ceremonies are a way for us to be able to tap into the power of nature, or to be able to use the wisdom which comes with everything in whatever it is that we're having the ritual or ceremony about. Rituals and ceremonies are also fantastic ways of honoring cycles. You know, you'll hear people who will have small ceremonies around the full moon, which is about, you know, releasing what no longer serves. You might have new moon ceremonies, which is about like creating an intent of what you want to attract to you or what you want to happen to you in the next month or so. There's also, you know, the summer and the winter solstice ceremonies, and all that sort of thing. When you do it around certain times, it can really heighten the energy and help bring things to fruition for you. And so shamans, by using ritual and ceremony, can really tap into that sort of energy and create this wonderful space where the energy is really heightened for amazing things to occur. But ceremony can also be used as a way to honor the person, whether it's like, you know, a particular rite of passage. Ceremonies, you know, have been used for eons in terms of, like, you know, for example, you know, for a couple perhaps calling in the soul of their child after a birth, after a death, all of those sorts of things as well. What else about shamanism? So, you know, I've kind of said that, you know, they're kind of the oldest kind of healers in the world and all that kind of stuff. So connected with that, sometimes shamans are actually seen as, you know, the medicine man or the medicine woman. They play that role, particularly, like, you know, in the older civilizations, the indigenous tribes and stuff. But then also sometimes the role of a shaman is not just medicine man or medicine woman. It's also that kind of spiritual teacher, that counselor, like the elder, the oracle, the one that the community turns to in order to understand what's going on and to get a bit more, I guess, knowledge in terms of what they need to do in the future in order to sustain themselves and all that sort of stuff. So in some ways, like, you know, shamans aren't just that healer. They're, you know, I mean, from a religious perspective, it's almost like they would be seen as that the priest, or, you know, someone who can help impart wisdom and knowledge. But for most cultures, like, you know, shamans, it's none of that hierarchy sort of thing. They're all on equal footing with everyone else. It's just they have this particular ability to be able to provide that sort of insight. And shamans are essentially a channel between, you know, this world and the other worlds. And so essentially for us, and the way that I've learned it, is that we just open ourselves up to become a channel and receive the wisdom and healing from our spirit guides and those other beings that I was chatting to you about. And so when they're the channel, it means that whatever comes through can come through in a variety of ways. You know, the healing or wisdom might come through the shaman making certain sounds and noises. So, you know, some people might whistle, some people might blow out, some people might, you know, dry retch. Others might sound like a particular animal. And then some other shamans might just use instruments and drums to assist with the healing and bring the medicine through that way, because, like, you know, through the beat of the drum or the sound of a flute, the guides just channel the healing through that sound instead. And there are some shamans, and I kind of like, I do the others, definitely, but a lot of what my healing work is about is just talking. And so some shamans would just be the channel for the wisdom to just come out of our mouth. And what I found is when that happens, a lot of times the words which are said just really speak to the soul of that person. And it kind of, I don't know, brings a realization about certain things as well in the shift that way. And then there are other shamans that use herbal medicines, and others are very hands-on, others aren't necessarily hands-on. So it really depends. Again, it's the type of person who, it all depends on the tool set that the particular person who the shaman is has. So if someone has been brought up and has had a lot of training in natural medicines in terms of understanding, getting to know plants and all that kind of stuff, then most likely, you would go to that shaman when it comes to plant medicine and to receive healing via plants and all that sort of stuff. Other shamans might, have much more of an affinity with, for example, sound, and that's a lot of the stuff that comes out instead of plant medicine. So, yeah, that's my first long-winded answer to the question of what is shamanism. So, the second question, is shamanic healing the same as Reiki? This is all based on my personal experience, right? So I'm happy if you guys don't agree with it or whatever. So my answer to that question is no. It's very different. Same but different. So the only common thing between the two is that you are channeling some sort of universal energy. And, whether you want to call it life force energy or whether you want to call it energy from your spirit guides or whatever, both are in some ways a way of channeling the energy through to provide healing for the client. Reiki is a Japanese energy healing modality. And depending on what school of Reiki that you are in and, what you believe in, Reiki was pretty much like created or came to the fore around, early 1900s sort of thing. And compared to that, shamanism has been around for a very, very long time before that. And I said, like, dating back to the indigenous tribes of the earth. Like, you would, from an Australian Aboriginal Indigenous perspective, there's, in the indigenous communities, there's a term called nyankari. I've probably just butchered that term, but that is pretty much like the equivalent of the shaman. So it's been around for a very, very long time. From my personal experience of Reiki, Reiki is very hands-on. So always putting your hands in certain placements. When I was learning Reiki, there was kind of like certain hand positions to do at certain times and all that sort of stuff. And when I was learning the Reiki, we were taught certain symbols to help enhance the energy flow or to help clear things, or symbols to, for example, help you do distance healing. I also found in Reiki that it was much more chakra based, and in some ways it was very much, I kind of just let my hands move wherever it was, but lots of people use the chakra system in order to kind of help identify imbalances and then put the hands in certain areas to kind of help that sort of thing. And so for me, the experience of Reiki was that Reiki was really great at just balancing out the chakras and balancing out your energy system at that point in time, to make you, get some more, feel like you got some more energy, and also, to make you feel a bit more grounded and a bit of peace in yourself, depending on what was going on before you came in. You generally leave a Reiki session feeling pretty relaxed and, in some ways, like, quite good. Reiki, can also help with removing energetic cords and repairing your energetic aura. Like, I found that yeah, Reiki's kind of good for just like a generic sort of energy balance and repair sort of thing. But I've kind of found that for me, Reiki in some ways was just a band-aid solution. And so it never really got to the root cause of the issue. So I'd come in with a particular pattern I wanted to work on, and then I'd find that pattern kind of coming back and back and back and back again. Like it was never really, in some ways, it's almost like I got short-term relief, not necessarily long-term, because the underlying cause was never really dealt with. That's my experience of Reiki, okay? Your experience could be something completely different. So, on the flip side, shamanism is not necessarily about having certain hand placements everywhere. Sometimes shamanism, shamanic healing can be completely hands-off. Other times, you might touch a person in a particular way. But in shamanic healing, you don't need to use symbols. So, for example, in the shamanic healings, I've never used the chakra symbol. I've never used the power symbol. And for distance healings, I never use symbols in order to allow me to do distance healings. I just tap into the energy and that's it, sort of thing. So, that's one of the differences there. The other difference for shamanic healing is that it gets to the underlying cause of an issue. So many times when you're doing shamanic healing, it's not just about balancing a particular, energy around a chakra. We work on all levels and can really get to that root cause, which, I guess from a shamanic perspective, we understand that the person themselves is multidimensional. And so shamans work on the multidimensional aspect, as opposed to just in some ways, one or two dimensional aspect, which from my personal experience is kind of what Reiki does. As I said, I kind of regarded Reiki as being the band-aid. And so shamanic healing is the opposite. We tear the band-aid off and we're working on that raw wound. And sometimes working on that raw wound can be really tough and it can be really painful. And some sessions you might even go into an episode of catharsis. Because sometimes dealing with wounds is really hard. It's like sometimes you got to pour salt into the wound before it gets better, sort of thing. It's that sort of thing. And other times, shamanic healing can be awesome. You're off, you're taken off, and you're completely relaxed. You don't know what the hell's going on, similar to what's going on in Reiki sometimes. But a lot of the times, after a shamanic healing, you'll notice or you'll begin to see certain shifts and changes within your life. And it might take one session to really get to the underlying cause and get rid of it, or depending on who you are, because we're so intricate, we're so unique, we're so individual that it might take a couple of sessions to be able to really unravel it. But all I can say is, from my perspective, shamanic healing really gets to that root cause, and the root cause can be something which is based on what's happened in your current lifetime, or it can be something out in a different dimension for you, which is not necessarily what Reiki does. However, you might have Reiki practitioners who have expanded their awareness to be able to take into all that sort of stuff, so that could happen as well. But, the answer to the questions here are just based on my personal experience of it. And to be honest, shamanic healing is the only one that's been able to shift the major patterns and stuff that I've had. So there you go. Okay, next question. What types of things do shamans do from a healing perspective? Quick answer, the short answer to that is a lot, or anything really. But lots of people consider only going to people like us, shamans, when there's something really out there to be shifted. It's almost like people go to us because they feel like whatever needs to be shifted isn't themselves. It's like something else that's been put on them. So, for example, shamans are known to remove the effects of black magic, remove curses, heal ancestral traumas, heal past lives, conduct soul retrievals, get rid of entities and, you know, implants and all that kind of stuff from aliens, breaking previous contracts, vows, and agreements, and etc. And, you know, and so all of that stuff that I've just listed tends to be something that people would equate with not being their fault, their responsibility. It's kind of like, well, an entity latched onto me, so I started acting like this, so you get rid of the entity and then I'm okay. Or, you know, an alien implanted this on me, so get rid of that implant and it's okay. And, you know, shit happens to my life because I've had this curse on me for years, and so get rid of the curse and it's okay. Yes, that is true. But my belief is that on some aspect, some level of your soul, you actually agree to all that kind of stuff happening. And, you know, you were responsible for that happening on some level. So it's not necessarily something that was outside. Like, some people tend to not like to take responsibility for things. I would challenge that and say that on some level you were completely responsible for that coming in. But that said, it is the sorts of things that shamans deal with. So the other thing, obviously I was talking about, like, you know, the external circumstances. Shamans deal with things from the internal perspective as well. And by internal, you know, it's stuff like not just physically. You know, there are some shamans that actually go do some psychic surgery and travel into the person and do some stuff. But from things and patterns which are affecting you as an adult, which occurred because of some sort of trauma or stress or experience or event that happened to you in your childhood. And so shamans are quite adept at going back into time, talking to that child and changing the energy around that child, so that now when a similar situation arises in your adulthood, you're not actually reacting from a child, but you're responding from the adult perspective. And, you know, we call that inner child work. And, you know, sometimes inner child work can be done by sound healing and all that, so you're not necessarily conscious that it's happening. But other inner child work is similar to what, like, psychotherapists use, for example, which is guided visualizations and guided meditations. And so when we take you into that space, we shift the energies. So hopefully you're not actually going to be reacting to this in the same way anymore when the same sort of trigger comes up, because we've dealt with the original cause of when that trigger and belief system and pattern was imprinted into your mind and your belief system, sort of thing. So, you know, that's, in some ways, it's not necessarily the sexy stuff, like removing curses and all that kind of stuff, but it's still a really important tool that shamans have to be able to help you. Especially, for example, if you've had like sexual abuse trauma as a child, or, you know, you've had narcissistic parents, or like you grew up in a household where there wasn't that much love, there was violence, you didn't feel safe and all that kind of stuff. All of those sorts of things, if you haven't had some sort of therapy or healing around it, will affect you in your adult life. And shamans can actually help you deal with that. Just not necessarily in the same way like a counselor or, you know, other people would deal with it, but it's certainly something that is in a shaman's toolkit to be able to deal with as well. What else? I said, you know, some shamans can perform psychic surgery. So, you know, you'll read about, there's some shamans that will actually kind of shrink themselves and from an energetic perspective go into the person's body and work from that perspective. That has happened to me in the past couple of weeks. It was the first time it happened, which is pretty cool. But that's another sort of thing that people can do as well. And so, you know, at the end of the day, as I said before, shamans are just clear channels for healing to occur, which pretty much means that, like, from my perspective, there's not much that a shaman can't deal with. But the extent to which a shaman can actually do their work and do the healing, it's fully dependent on the trust, the faith, and the willingness of the client who wants to be healed. So if the trust, the faith, and the willingness is there 100%, then things will shift, But if there's a seed of doubt in the client that's not going to happen and all that kind of stuff, then that could very well affect the efficacy of the healing which you're getting. The healing will only occur and happen to the extent that the person is able and willing to welcome it and handle it. So that's all I'll say about that one. So the next question, what tools do shamans use as part of the healing? Short answer, it depends. It kind of depends on what spirit guides the shaman to use. For some clients, the shaman doesn't need any other tool. They just use their physical body, whether it's the voice, the hands, whatever. That's more than enough. You don't need anything more. Other times, shamans can use crystals, parts of animals like feathers, wings, like teeth or whatever. They can use that to assist in the healing. I personally have a crow wing, which you'll see at the back there. That's that black thing there, hanging there. I use that. That tends to be called quite a lot for use when I'm trying to shift really like deep shadow work in someone. And then they can use different instruments like the drum, also there, and the flute, also there, Tibetan bowls, clapsticks, all that sort of thing. You can also use parts of nature like rocks, branches, leaves, all of that sort of stuff. It really depends on what spirit the guides are telling us to use for that particular person. So the next question is, are shamans psychic? So the answer to this depends on what your definition of psychic is. So I'm going to give you two particular definitions and then I'll give you the answer. So the first definition of psychic is being able to converse with spirit guides and give you advice and messages from them. Then yes, most shamans do that. But they do it in various degrees. So for example, I'm not the type of shaman that's always going to give you messages from your guides. I'm only going to give it to you if I feel like it has to come through. Because a lot of times, they won't really say much in terms of a direct message for you sometimes. And a lot of times, because for me as a shaman, I tend to really use my voice in terms of how I speak, like the words that I speak. Then a lot of the times, the messages come out that way. But the difference for what I do compared to perhaps other shamans is that I don't go into your future. I don't predict your future. So if you don't come to me and don't ask me if you want to know about your future, because I'm not going to tell you. Why? Because I believe in the power of choice, and I believe that you have the power to shape your own destiny. And so even if, for example, your destiny has already been decided by your soul before you come down or whatever, you still have the power of the choice in terms of what path you take in order to get to that destination. And sometimes I feel that if you ask me about what's going on in the future, what I say might actually plant the seed for you to make that particular choice, where instead of you actually relying on your own internal compass to make that choice instead. So I don't like to necessarily take your power away. I want to give you the power to make the choice, which is why I don't really go there in terms of letting you know what's going on in the future. But there are other shamans who do, and in that aspect, yes, they are quite psychic, and they can almost be like the oracle and the seer sort of thing. So that's the first definition. Second definition is of psychic is just having the intuitive ability to sense things and know things without any logical explanation. And yes, all shamans are like that. They're definitely psychic in that aspect, that's for sure. Next question, do all shamans use plant medicine? The quick answer to that is no. It's kind of like everyone, we all have our specialties. So those who are specializing or have a keen interest in plant medicine and herbs and all that kind of stuff and have trained in it, yes, they can use plant medicine. And by plant medicine, not only do I mean certain plants to help you with things, but it's like the cacao ceremonies and the ayahuasca ceremonies, all that kind of stuff. Use of plants to help you enter into a different state of consciousness. I don't do that, but there are definitely shamans that do that. And in fact, I think that was a way of life for a very, very long time for people, but I don't do that here. What else? Okay, next question. Is shamanic healing dangerous? In my personal experience, no. As I said before, shamanic healing is only going to meet you where you're at. So it will take you where you're going to be able to handle it. It's not going to take you beyond that, right? So, and the other thing is the shamanic healing is fully channeled through from your spirit guides and other beings who come from a place of unconditional love. So they're not going to do anything that's going to cause you harm. The only caveat to that is around plant medicine. If you've got someone who is facilitating the use of plant medicine and doesn't have that great of an understanding or experience for the use of that sort of plant medicine, and also which includes preparing the person who's going to use that plant medicine for the use of it. And sometimes the preparation will include some sort of cleansing and purification ritual before the plant medicine is actually taken. You've heard lots of stories where certain people have gone into ayahuasca ceremonies, and some people have died and other people have gotten really sick. So in some cases that can be quite dangerous, but again, there are shamans who come from the perspective of, well, if you're supposed to die, that was how you're doing it, so then it was all meant to happen, sort of thing, which it makes sense, but I guess the element of danger still is a little bit there when it comes to plant medicine sort of stuff. Next question. What are the sorts of things that you can feel after having had a shamanic session? So again, you might have noticed that a lot of my answers to these questions are, it depends. So the answer to this question is, it depends. It depends on who you are, how you deal with things, how deep the healing went, and how much work you've done in the past in terms of healing. So for example, if you've never had anything like this before, and by you've never even had energy healing before, and you go and your first energy healing session is a shamanic healing session, you could feel really tired after that. You feel really emotional after that. But some people could feel ecstatic and over the moon, Other people who've had, done that quite a bit and kind of have gone through a lot of stuff, sometimes, they just feel great and then they just go on with their lives. It's easy for them to actually integrate the healing which has happened. So by integration, because I know it's this buzzword which is used around in healing circles, it pretty much means having the time to allow that healing to actually, have the effect in the body. So for integration from a shamanic healing perspective, for example, if there was a pattern that you were trying to break, the integration is when you notice that you're no longer in that pattern anymore. Okay? So, there is a possibility that after a session, things will get worse before it gets better. Some people will call this a healing crisis sort of thing. I remember I went and had a kahuna massage ages ago and I came out feeling great, but an hour later I got really sick and I got sick for the next couple of days. But then after that I felt great. So just know that, again, because shamanic healing is ripping that band-aid off the wound and dealing with the wound. Sometimes when you deal with the wound, it's pretty freaking painful. And so you just have to trust that it's supposed to be painful. And then know that in a few days afterwards, things should shift. And if they don't, contact your shamanic practitioner. They should be able to explain to you a little bit more as to why it's like that. So, pretty much the answer is you can feel a range of things after a session. It just really depends on who you are. And what I just want to say is with shamanic healing, a lot of the times, a lot of the work is done on the energetic perspective, right? So you've got all these energetic layers to your body, all these multi-dimensional layers to your body. So the healing could be done on the emotional, mental, spiritual layers, various points in time, whether it's this life or other lives and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes more often than not, it takes a while for all of the healing and the changes to trickle through to the physical body. The physical body is the last place where imbalances manifest. So you might have an imbalance out on the emotional level, which hasn't been dealt with for a really long time. Because it hasn't been dealt with, it condenses and it gets thicker and bigger to the point that it physically manifests somewhere in your body. So given that it's your physical body is the last place for an imbalance to show up, it is also the last place for an imbalance to go. So just know that, just be open to what happens and don't necessarily have the expectation of going in there. If you had chronic pain for 2 or 3 years or years, don't necessarily have the expectation that it's going to go right then and there. Because generally, if you've got chronic pain, there's a lot of imbalances out on your various energetic layers that need to be shifted first. And so it can take a while and a number of sessions for it to actually then physically manifest as clearing. So I know this is one of my longer videos actually, but I kind of thought it was quite important to articulate a little bit more of what shamanic healing is and why it's a bit different to some other healing modalities that you've heard of. So again, if you've got any other questions around shamanic healing, let me know. Again, I'll put my contact details down below and all that kind of stuff. And I hope you found it really useful. And if there is any other sort of topic that you want me to chat about and all that sort of stuff, then again, just drop me an email or something and let me know and I'll do my best. Okay. Thank you. Have a great day.